Kia ora ana koutou katoa. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Northland Regional Council's online hui to talk about how we manage our freshwater in Te Tai Tokerau. But before I start, I'd like to open with a karakia that talks about how we can work together collectively and united in our commitment to fresh water and enhancing the quality of our fresh water. Nō reira, kia ino i tātou. Ki ai o ki te rangi, ki ai o ki te whenua, ki ai o i ngā Waimāori katoa. Kia kōtahi ai i ngā hiahia i raro i te whakaaro kōtahi. Haumi e, hui e, tae ki e. Ko wai kōrero ki a koutou i tēnei pō reo ruka hau, no Ngāpuhi, no tūwhare toa, he uria hau hoki o te hapu Ngāti Manu, Ngāti Hine, Ngāti Te Rino, Te Parawhau, nō reira tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora everyone. My name is Oriel Ruka and I'm your MC for tonight. As you can see, I am also the Northern Regional Council Group Manager for Governance and Engagement. Nō reira nau mai, haere mai. I'd like to really just run you through just briefly how the night will how we'll run today's hui. We have a series of speakers who'll talk about different aspects of the draft freshwater plan. Celia Whitihira and Troy Brockbank from our Tāngata Whenua Water Advisory Group. Justin Murfitt and Leon Kiefer from our NRC Policy Specialist. And te mana me te mauri o te wai, Troy Brock from the Tāngata Whenua Water Advisory Group. That'll be followed by a question and answer session with these speakers, plus our NRC councillors that are here today, Councillor Robinson and Councillor Blackwell. We also have Karina Ross from Dairy New Zealand. You can type questions into the chat as we go. We'll start working through the questions during the question and answers part. And just also too, we're recording this so those who can't make it are able to watch. So just wanting to introduce, the context of our hui for today. Fresh water is an important and precious essential to all of us for our unique ecosystems and biodiversity. The health of our communities, sustainable livelihoods, and resilience to the effects of climate change. We know that most of the waterways in our region are in a poor state, and fixing these problems are going to take time. Some of the problems we face with our freshwater quality, such as sedimentation, will take decades to improve. With input from Tāngata Whenua and the primary sector, Council has done a lot of thinking about how we manage freshwater, what we need to do differently, and what the most appropriate timeframes might be for putting changes in place. Our Council needs solutions that will work for our communities as well as our waterways. That's why it's so important that we get input, we get kōrero, especially those who are likely to be most directly affected and lead out the changes from Tāngata Whenua, from farmers, and our tai tamariki, the future generations who will be living with the consequences of the decisions we make now. The new government has set out its intention to replace national freshwater policy, and we don't know yet what that might look like. What we do know is that we have major challenges with our freshwater quality. We need a plan for improving the health of our wai, and we need input from across the rohe to help shape the future management of water in Te Tai Tokerau. Tonight, you'll hear from our presenters about the mahi done by our Tāngata Whenua Water Advisory Group, feeding into the development of this plan, and the draft changes we'd like your feedback on. But most importantly, tonight is an opportunity for the Regional Council to hear from you. We've set aside time for questions after the presentation, so please feel free to send us any questions you have in the chat. I'd like to also take this opportunity to acknowledge our outgoing chair, Tui Shortland, whose contributions to this kaupapa have been significant, first as a member of the Tāngata Whenua Water Advisory Group, and then for her time as the chair of the council. Tēnā koe e Tui. I'd also like to acknowledge our presenters and all of you for joining us tonight. Our panelists, your presence and your input are vital to helping us shape this plan. So I'd like to introduce to you and thank our speakers before. I'd like to introduce to you our speakers, and our first speaker is our Tāngata Whenua Water Advisory Group member, Celia Witihira. Now, just to share a little bit about Celia, he wāhine ātāhua, he wāhine koi hoki no te rarawa te iwi. So Celia has been working in Māori resource management for over 10 years in the Waikato and Te Tokiro regions. She has held various roles from co-management implementation to policy advisory, relationship management with local government, iwi and NGOs. Currently, she is committed to working with her hapu. She takes on many roles for her hapu and is a wāhine known for her commitment to the taiao, commitment to taking on roles around policy and strategy development, and her motivation, which is why she's here tonight to share, is to leave a flourishing taiao for the next generation, where te ao Māori and tikanga are accepted, respected and thriving. Nō reira e te tuahine Celia, nau mai haere mai, tēnā koe mō tō tautoko I tēnei pō. Kia ora.
E mihi ana ki a koe Oriel mō te whakaritinga o tēnei kaupapa o te rānei. Tēnā koutou I te whānau o te tai tokerau. Kua tai mai tātou ki tēnei huitupa ki te kōrero e pāna ki tēnei kaupapa o te wai Māori. No Matarawa me Ahipara o ki tupuna, ko Celia Witihira hau. To start off this kōrero, I'd like to present some of the work that the Whenua Water Advisory Group that I'm a part of has some of the key opportunities for Tāngata Whenua to get involved and provide feedback to Northland Regional Council on the draft freshwater plan change and the action plan. In this part of the presentation, we're quickly going to go through the process that our group has gone through to support this kaupapa. Te mana o te wai, the vision and values. We'll then hand over to the council to go through the changes that they have finished. Troy will go into a deeper dive on the key messages that we have for Tāngata Whenua to consider and give feedback on. This plan change has come about due to the National Policy Statement for Freshwater 2020, sometimes known as NPSFM, which contains the fundamental concepts of te mana o te wai. This concept gives mana to the importance of wai and recognises that protecting and prioritising the health of our wai and the well-being of te whaiao also protects the mauri of the wai. This concept also outlines 6 principles relating to the roles of Tāngata Whenua and others in freshwater decision making. These principles underpin how we work together to improve our wai. Next slide. While we're not really sure what the new government has planned for the regulations and legislation, we do know that climate change is happening right now, and it's not going anywhere. As the ever-increasing effects of climate change are felt with increasing severe droughts, storms and floods, increasing temperatures and sea level rises, and all the things that we've experienced this year, the ability of our wai, roto and repo to adapt to these changes is going to be critical. And we know that the healthier ecosystems, the more resilient they'll be to climate change. We need to be planning for our future water needs, as without access to secure and healthy water, we can't have sustainable livelihoods. Next slide. TWAG. We are the rōpū of kaitiaki and technicians from different professional backgrounds who all whakapapa to Te Tai Tokiro. And TTMAC representatives set up by the Regional Council to provide advice to Council on what this new freshwater plan might look like from a Tāngata whenua perspective. This has been sometimes a challenging space to be in, particularly trying to weave together te ao Māori ways of viewing the world and one where economic imperatives are predominant. It has entailed a huge amount of sustained effort from TWAG members, and we hope that what we've come up with provides a good basis for others to add their kōrero to. Our Stage 2 report, Ngā Roimata o Te Atua, The Tears of Ranginui and Papatūānuku, has recommendations which include long-term vision, values, objectives, policies, rules, and monitoring attributes. All three of Tāngata whenua of TWAG's reports are available on the Council website. Next slide. Te mana me te mauri o te wai has been adopted by the Council and used as a way to express te mana o te wai in Te Tai Tokiro. Ko te wai te mea I kawea te ora o te tangata, ko te wai te kōrero ora o te ao tūroa. Water is the carrier of human existence. Water is the original source of human life and the original source of the long-standing natural world. Our vision for freshwater is, in order to give effect to te mana o te wai, the spiritual well-being and whakapapa of te hurihanga wai is prioritised, respected, protected and enhanced. Next slide. TWAG proposed a range of values to go alongside the compulsory and other values that are listed in the table you can see. These values are significant to us as Māori people, not just the kupu, but the tikanga, mātauranga and actions that go with the value that outlay how we are as a people and our holistic way of living with te tai ao. For example, rāhui can be seen as a band. However, it is much more than that. There's tikanga, karakia, and rituals that our people use to place the rāhui for a specific reason, which could be respect for someone that has passed, or making sure that our whānau don't get sick from eating kai too early, or that we know that te tai ao needs time to be able to restore itself without human interference for a while. TWAG used the meaning behind the values to come up with the recommendations in the Stage 2 report for how we can make better decision making and management of freshwater that benefits us all. I'm going to stop there, but I will refer everyone to the Council's website, where you can find all of our TWAG reports and associated information. Kia ora, I'm going to hand back to you now, Oriel.
Kia ora, Celia, he mihi aroha tēnei kia koe mō tō kōrero i tēnei pō mō tō aroha hoki o tātou o ngā ture o te ao Māori. Nō reira, tēnā koe te tuahine. Just thank you for sharing the beauty of our values of what it is in te ao Māori, and also acknowledge the hard work that you represent for the Tāngata Whenua Water Advisory Group to bring in our te ao Māori worldview into such a complex area. So thank you for sharing that in such a beautiful way. What I'd like to do now in acknowledging our next speaker, Leon, who is one of our policy team, as busy as a policy team can be in our regional council. So I'd like to hand over to Leon, who can briefly introduce his role again, which would be great. And back to you, Leon. Nō reira, tēnā koe, Leon. Welcome.
Tēnā koe, Oriel. Kia ora tātou, everyone. I'm Leon Kiefer. I'm a freshwater policy specialist at Northland Regional Council, and I'm going to present to you a very summarized version of our what we call the rural landowners hui. We had one last week. We're having another one this week and another one after that. But I just want to highlight some of the key themes that we found from our monitoring results, as well as some of the rules that we think are going to have the most impact on people living within Te Tātokaro. So to start off, our biggest issues that the monitoring tells us, we have erosion of our land, which is causing sedimentation of our rivers and harbors, E. coli contamination, so that's fecal contamination, and the data shows a lot of it is coming from livestock, although there's a human wastewater as well that definitely presents a human health risk there. And overall, we are seeing degraded habitat, poor ecosystem health across our waterways. And these are really the three issues that are persistent, and they're common throughout Northland. So pretty much wherever you are, whichever stream or lake you're looking at, you're probably going to run into one of these issues. So just to dive into the detail a little bit, so sediment really is a result of erosion on land and erosion of our riverbanks. So Northland has a very, what we think of as a flashy river environment. So we'll have long periods of dry weather followed by extreme weather events, or at least weather events that cause a lot of river flow. During those dry periods, the rivers and harbors don't look too bad. It's really only after that heavy rain event that we see a lot of our rivers turning brown. So the two figures in the middle of the slide, you'll see Northland, and you'll have a few dots of different colors, blue, green, orange, red, and some squiggly lines, which have corresponding colors. So the dots are where we have monitoring. So we have scientists that go out, they scoop up the water, and they go to these sites monthly, and they've been doing it for many years, and they measure water quality on the left-hand side, and water clarity on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, they measure something called dissolved reactive phosphorus. So this is a mineral which is commonly found in our soils. And the picture on the right kind of shows the true water quality when it comes to sediment in the region. Red is poor. So we're measured up against a range of national standards. And a lot of our rivers are coming under those national bottom lines. So we have a real issue with sediment. So we need to think of ways to combat that. A related attribute that we're worried about is E. coli. So E. coli from fecal contamination, big cause of human contact risk. So if you're swimming, if you're eating kai from our water, there is a risk that you get sick. And our monitoring is showing that we have poor or very poor E. coli contamination across Northland. So pretty much any river that you go in, there's a really good chance that E. coli is living in there. We have done some monitoring to trace it back to where it comes from, and a lot of it is from some of our rural land uses. And again, we also have some pretty big wastewater treatment plants around the region. So discharges from them, as well as on-site septic systems that might be getting on in age. These all contribute to E. coli populations in the river. So we're really trying to improve our waterways by removing that source of fecal contamination. And we think by doing that, we could probably by 2040 see really significant improvements in the health of our water from an E. coli perspective. And finally, talked about ecosystem health. So ecosystem health is a really complex attribute or value that we need to measure. So all of Northland streams would have been completely covered by shade and bush for much of New Zealand's life, which means that all of the life within the rivers have evolved to enjoy shady, cool temperatures within the water. But what we see is a lot of our waterways are lacking that riparian vegetation. One of the ways that we measure that is by measuring the amount of insect life, the biodiversity there. So macroinvertebrates is one of those key attributes that we measure. And again, that photo in the middle has a map of Tāngata, and you can see a lot of red dots there. So these are areas where we've got poor macroinvertebrate biodiversity. So the insects, the bugs that we're finding there indicate that there's not a whole lot of life, not a whole lot of diversity. And that really is sort of a master attribute that tells us there are a whole lot of things going wrong. And we just have an overall poor quality in our waterways. So to try and address all of these issues, we have this freshwater plan change package. So a lot of what we think about is the plan change text. So that's where we introduce rules and policies in our regional plan, which help manage land use, help manage water use, etc. And that's things like, you need to go get a resource consent for doing X, Y, Z. But we have a whole heap of other things that we're looking at. So the draft action plan is a summary of what Northland Regional Council itself is currently doing, as well as what we can possibly do in the future. A lot of that is pulling different funding levers or having some programs to try and either increase monitoring, increase outreach and education, financial help, that sort of thing. And we also have a series of documents out there. Two of them are pretty important in this feedback round, and that's the Have Your Say on Stock Exclusion and Have Your Say on the Targeted Allocation Policy. Troy's going to talk to the Targeted Allocation Policy at the end of this presentation, but we will dive into the stock exclusion and riparian setback discussion in a short while. And we've also developed a GIS map viewer, which is particularly useful for viewing property in relation to what we're defining as highly erodible land, which we'll delve into in a minute. So as I mentioned, we have these three big issues, which are Northland wide. And what we've concluded is we really have a limited amount of tools in our toolbox. The ones I've got listed there are really where we think we can get the most bang for our buck. So where we can control land disturbance more, we can improve stock exclusion from waterways, increase riparian setbacks, and put more controls on discharges, will actually improve just about every value, every freshwater value that we're trying to do. And I briefly talked about the other actions, but I think we'll just move on in the interest of time. Happy to answer more questions about that at the end. So the key draft rule changes that we're considering, the highly erodible land, that is the new way that we're trying to identify areas which are at risk, extreme and significant risk of erosion. So we've redefined how that is done, and that's all based on the slope of land. So we have particular rules around earthworks and forestry in the draft rule changes, and we're also considering other ways of protecting that land, perhaps by stock exclusion that sort of thing. We haven't drafted any rules around that yet. Keeping stock out of waterways and wetlands. This is already a requirement to a large extent, but we're looking at increasing where these rules would apply. And we're also considering what is the appropriate setback distance from a stream or a lake. The elimination and reduction of discharges to water. This is particular to wastewater and effluent. So we'll delve into those details in a minute. More controls on exotic forests. Plantation forestry is another big activity in Northland, and we want to avoid a lot of those major effects that we see, with clear-cut felling, etc. And across the range of our plan, we're looking at reducing impacts on Tāngata whenua values. We're doing that through a range of policies, which Troy and Celia are touching on, and also attempting to increase Tāngata whenua participation in the decision-making process, which is really key to ensuring that we get everything covered that we're obligated to under the treaty and under the Resource Management Act. So keys to reducing sediment and E. coli in water bodies we see is protecting our highly erodible land. So this photo on the screen is actually down in the Auckland region, but within the Kaipara catchment. And it's a similar story to what we see across Northland. So this is post-Cyclone Gabrielle. On the right-hand side, what we've done is overlaid our slope thresholds. So for highly erodible land, it's a slope that is equal or greater to 25 degrees. That's quite steep. Over 35 degrees, you're probably not able to walk up and down. You might be rolling down, but you're not going to be climbing up it very easily. So these are actually really, really steep. And what we found is probably about half of that land within Northland is being grazed. So we see this as a high risk. It might not necessarily be actively eroding, but there is a high risk that it does. And once it starts eroding, it really doesn't stop for a generation or two, unless you've got some intervention. Keeping stock out of waterways. So we have a lot of unfenced streams in Northland, and where we do have fenced streams, they might not necessarily have enough riparian vegetation to enable any filtering function. A lot of them are subject to ongoing active erosion as well, especially in those flashy catchments. So we think by discouraging stock from accessing those riparian areas and encouraging planting or other uses than grazing, we'll see a reduction in the amount of sediment caused by that. And of course, E. coli, reducing the input from livestock. As I mentioned, we also have some tighter controls across the board on these areas. So land preparation, cultivation, earthworks, vegetation clearance. We really want to make sure that the activities that are occurring adjacent to our waterways and on that really steep land, we want to make sure that it's appropriate. If we think it's a high risk activity, we really need to have some controls in place to mitigate the adverse effects. So that's where we've tweaked the rules a bit around those existing activities. And as I mentioned, phasing out wastewater discharges to water. So besides the obvious cultural impact that this has, it also is a big contribution to E. coli. So what we're looking at doing is prohibiting domestic wastewater discharges to water. That means you cannot apply for a resource consent, and it will be illegal to discharge, a septic system or wastewater treatment plant to directly to water. Now, there are some wastewater treatment plants that currently do this. It's treated. However, these consents will expire, and what we're looking at doing is making the threshold to renew those consents a non-complying activity. There will be no new wastewater discharges to water through the existing draft plan as we have it. Farm and dairy effluent production land discharges, we also are looking at tightening up the rules around that. So farm dairy effluent, we're looking at prohibiting these discharges after the 1st of January 2030 if they have an existing consent, and that's to give farmers who are utilizing these systems time to adapt and to find a discharge to land solution. and we're looking at prohibiting new wastewater discharges. If you have an existing septic system that's going to land, there's some additional controls there. If you're a farm that currently discharges to land, it might be a permitted activity now. We're looking at increasing that to a controlled activity, meaning that you would need to apply for a resource consent. Again, this is still draft, and we're a long way away from a proposed activity, a proposed plan. So we really need your feedback on this, how it might affect you, how it might affect your operation if you are a farmer doing this sort of activity. And our timeline as of last week was we're looking at finalizing our communications here on the 4th of March. That's still going ahead as planned. So we'll see you at the Dargaville Field Days. That's our last public event. And then we're looking at late 2024 having a proposed freshwater plan. So that's our current timeline. Things are quite turbulent at the moment at the top, so we'll see what direction the government takes us in, but we're carrying on as planned. So please make sure you get some feedback to us by the 4th of March, because this is really important that we hear what you have to say. Kia ora, Oriel, I'll hand it back over to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, kia ora, Leon. I learned a new word today that I can impress my mokopuna with multi-invertebrate. So I'm going to take that away and ask them if they know what that is, a measure of. So thank you so much. And you did well to get through that with your coughing. So very clear, very, very good to hear how this will all come together, and you know, the roles and attributes that we're looking to get feedback on. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much, Leon, for doing that for us. Ngā mihi, ngā mihi. Kia ora. Look, so in terms of mokopuna, I want to now go to introducing our mokopuna of and our proud uri, Troy Brockbank of Te Tai Tukaro. I will let him explain where and who he hails to, but also want to share that Troy stands as a multifaceted individual, mokopuna, son, brother, husband, father, water practitioner, teacher, student, board member, and an engineer. So tino koi, as always. Troy possesses a Bachelor of Engineering, Civil Engineering from the University of Auckland. He has extensive involvement in water environmental projects spanning Tāngata whenua entities, engineering consultancies, civil contractors, suppliers, and many more to list, and particularly local and central government. I have to say, I love to share this because we are supporters of what he continues to support the mighty Tani Wha. So, Troy, I would like to welcome you. No mai, haere mai. We look forward to hearing your kōrero. Thank you, Troy. Nō reira, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe te tohini. Mō tō whakahaere o tēnei kaupapa, mō tō mahi ana ki te mihi ki a koe. O tērā, tēnā tātou. Ko te mauri he mea hona ki te wai, ko te wai. Ko au te wai, ko au. Ko Troy Brockbank a hau. Ai, he uri o hau te Tai Tokiro. Ko te raroa, Ngāti Hine, Ngā Pui, Ngāti Wai, Ngāti Kahu, Woku Iwi. Kia ora. Firstly, mihi ana ki a koe, Leon, for outlining some of the key aspects of the draft freshwater plan change. From here, I'd just like to highlight some of our thinking from TWAG and how we see the advice we've given to Council as providing a crucial platform, or a holding place, if you like, for everyone to add as the Council develops further its freshwater plan change. We have been very clear to Council that our advice is that they need to support everyone so they can engage in this freshwater plan change if they wish to do so. And that advice does not constitute consultation or engagement with Tāngata whenua. We don't actually have a mandate to speak on behalf of anyone We are providing our advice as individuals, as uri o te tai tokiro, as technicians and practitioners in the freshwater space, in te tai tokiro and nationally, but we also have some expertise and other expertise in this space as well. It is also an impossible task, I guess, to provide advice at the level of detail that can only come from the local communities, from our whānau, our hapu, our marae, and our wonderful kaitiaki on the ground. And so our advice by necessity is very high level. And we hope will provide a framework for others to add to reflect the different values and perspectives that exist across Te Tai Tokiro. So with that, I'd just like to take us through a few of the key messages for your attention. And basically, we would really love and really like your feedback on what has been put forward. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Right, so for our whānau, this plan, it increases our opportunity to be involved or actively involved in improving our freshwater, our Wai Māori, with action support our riparian planting and wetland restoration, but also rules that might mean that you get to that you need to get consents to fence off waterways and steep hill countries and the likes to protect our awa, to protect our roto, our reke, and our waterways. It also might affect whether there is any water available in the future for our papakainga and for our marae and communities. At a hapu level, the draft freshwater plan and actions might mean increasing requests for cultural impact assessments, but also increasing the opportunities to be actively involved in freshwater management and decision making. There are also actions proposed to do more detailed freshwater planning to define a hapuri wai, a catchments in the future. For our iwi, this might mean that they have to look at their commercial operations, especially farming and plantation forest assets, and see what the proposed rules might mean for their operations. It also might mean there is support for water being allocated for development of Māori land and settlement assets. Now, if we just go to the next slide again. So key messages. For TWAG, there are a few key aspects of what we would like to highlight that we see as being fundamental in the draft freshwater plan change. Firstly, we believe that Council needs to engage with tangata whenua and communities at all local catchment levels to define what their visions and values are for their wai. That is going to take a lot of resourcing and time and energy, but it means that this needs to happen and also needs to be funded through the long-term plan. And there is no guarantee that the resourcing is going to come to do that work, but we need to kind of get behind this in order to protect and nurture and tiaki our wai. The next is our recommendation for all wai to be given legal personhood. By that, we mean that all water be treated with respect as a living entity with its own rights to be healthy and thrive. Council has agreed to do further work to look at what this may look like in practice and what options are available for appointing guardians of kaitiaki to speak on behalf of the wai. This is a key aspect in realigning a Western worldview that has treated rivers and water infrastructure resources to be utilised to be more towards a more balanced approach, acknowledging our Te Ao Māori worldview and that worldview a hapu, a iwi, a hapuri wai, where rivers are living entities and also intertwine with our whenua and communities through whakapapa. We also want to highlight that cultural impact assessments as part of the resource consent process are a key mechanism that Council is proposing for tangata whenua input into decision making, providing an opportunity for mana whenua, tangata whenua o te tai tokiro to share their knowledge and advice with applicants. Next slide, please. The other key TWAG recommendation I'd like to highlight here is the targeted water allocation policy, which Council didn't put into the draft plan change itself. However, we've created a separate consultation document for everyone to consult on. The policy implements some of the key values and targets we have proposed and basically sets aside 20% of any water that is allocated for in a catchment for 4 specific purposes. These are for environmental enhancement, so restoration of wetland or the creation of new wetlands, for example. Also for domestic use by papakainga and marae, also for use on Māori land, and the final use is a catch-all. So any other use, as long as it contributes to a fund or to an environmental enhancement fund. We haven't made any suggestions as to how much or exactly what that fund would be used for, but what we do know is that in order to fix all of our waterways at the speed we need to, it is going to cost. And the question is, where is that money going to come from? We have proposed this as a mechanism by which those who are applying for a consent to take water contribute to a fund that can be used to help cover the cost of the work we know needs to be done. It could pay for wetland restoration, it could pay for riparian planting, native forest restorations on highly erodible land that landowners are otherwise not going to be able to afford to do anything with, or to, around the restoration mahi. One of the other reasons we propose this targeted water allocation policy is to ensure that there is an opportunity for development of Māori land, for which access to fresh water is essential. Northland's economy can benefit from Māori development, and enabling that to happen by reserving a portion of allocable water will go some way towards that. It is a key policy that also recognises the need to restore the Māori of our wai, all the way across Te Tai Tokiro, and it allows more water for the rivers and the wetlands themselves. We really encourage feedback on our proposal on both the draft plan and the supporting documents, and hope that Council will include the policy, or this particular policy, in the notified version of the plan change next year. Next slide, please. Next slide. Ka pai, and just to wrap up here, we have an opportunity to influence what goes into the new freshwater plan rules for Te Tai Tokiro right now. We haven't seen this opportunity for a long, long time, and we may not see it for a long, long time. But we have a say right now, we have an influence right now to have a say in what the freshwater of the future will look like in Te Tai Tokiro, and to make the changes we all need to, so we all have access to clean and healthy freshwater, not just for us, but also for the mokopuna of the future. We've got some excellent projects and initiatives happening, and this freshwater plan change can also look at what support and resourcing Council provides to support kaitiaki and communities on the ground, whether that's to do with monitoring or restoration or enhancement. We need to think about the support needed to make that happen now. And that's why the draft action plan is also quite critical, as that's where all the financing and all the resources that Council may allocate are set out. This is a step on a long journey, as we all know, so I encourage everyone to get involved in this new freshwater plan. Get out there, it's all on the website, and please do submit. So, ngā mihi nui kia koutou.
Oh, kia ora, Troy. E rere ana te mihi aroha ki a koe. I could really hear the commitment to looking at how we can work together to ensure that we are thinking about the generations to come, and very much appreciated too the acknowledgement of Māori landowners, the importance of considering what the work as already is for the kaitiaki of Tētai Tokerau, and the work that they are doing and how we can support the economic development and leveraging off a lot of Māori landowners and farmers and how they contribute to the success of what is being proposed here. So thank you, Troy. I'm sure there'll be a lot of iwi that claim to your cleverness, but I'll say for Ngāpuhi, thank you very much, Ngāpuhi, tēnā koe. Look, I just want to now, I'd also want to say to those that are watching, thank you once again for coming. I just want to say that we may not be able to answer all the questions that you put through, but we will do our best. And I'm going to now ask our panel who have joined us here tonight some of the questions, and also ask them just to briefly introduce themselves as they ask the questions. Not all of them have presented, but they've made some time tonight to come and kōrero to this very important development. Nō reira, aha kona piki me ngā heke, kia ora. So look, one of the questions I am wanting to just ask our panel too is to be able, is it actually worthwhile engaging in this proposal and providing feedback in this process? So I would like to ask Councillor Marty Robinson to take an opportunity as well as introduce himself to say, Councillor Robinson, is it worthwhile? Nō reira, tēnā koe.
Kia ora koutou, ko Marty Robinson tēnei. I'm Pewharangi Whangaroa constituency councillor. Is it worthwhile? I've been involved with Waitangi River Catchment Group for a number of years, 7 years. It was operated by the Regional Council, where everybody that was involved with the Wai talked about the Wai and how best to manage land and water. There were Tāngata whenua and farmers, all land users, and it was a good discussion. What we want here is discussion and input. We've got ideas. I've just written a few notes here. We have waterways that are suffering from degradation, and we've got a lot of land use which is affecting the quality of the waterways. So who do we look after? We want people who want to go fishing, who want clean water. We want land use that is going to be able to give us income and employ people. So we have a balance there. It is going to be very expensive to come up with answers that are going to give us fresh water and land use however we want it. So there's a bit of conflict there. We want to hear your views on what you think should be done and how you think it might be able to be achieved. It's important that everybody speaks up, or as many people speak up as possible, so we can hear all those views and come to some good results. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Māori, tautoko Māori. I actually want to ask the same question of a couple of our members. So, Celia, I'd like to come to you from your perspective as a technical expert for Tāngata whenua and being involved in this piece of work. What is it? What is it that's important for our people and for all to engage in this process? Is it what's the worthiness of it?
Thank you, Oriel. Well, when I think about this question, and I want to reiterate also some of the kōrero that Troy said, because, you know, as whānau, Māori landowners, marae, hapu, iwi, this is our opportunity to participate in at the drafting stage before the formal process. So this is the best time that we have to, you know, have we got things right? Review it to really make sure some of the, you know, to support te mana me te mauri o te wai, the values that we've highlighted, and making sure that we've landed in the right way, you know. And this is our best time as whānau to be able to influence, you know, what is written and how it's written. Because once it goes into the formal process, it becomes a lot harder. So when we think about some of the concepts that Troy talked about earlier, targeted water allocation, legal personhood, you know, the targeted water allocation isn't currently in the drafted plan as it is. So we need people to feedback, our people to feedback on that, you know, to help it move it into a phase where we can have it in. And same with legal personhood, it's in the action plan. So, you know, making sure that our whānau are submitting on those aspects to make sure that they stay where they are. And if they have ideas on how to refine them further or better put them into rules or things like that, that's the type of feedback that would be great for us to have. And just that support from our whānau to make sure that what we've currently got related to our tangata whenua aspirations and values in the plan remain there. Yeah. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Celia. Thank you so much. Celia, just before I go to Karina, I just want to follow up one more follow-up question. The importance of tai tamariki, of our young people right now being able to engage in some way, shape or form. You, of the tangata whenua and the experts, how do you see their ability to contribute to such an important corridor that will be, yes, as we know, something that will impact them? Can I just have you just one more time to just consider that for us? And then I'm going to go to Karina. Hilda.
Yeah. Kia ora, Oriel. Our TWAG, as part of our comms program, we do have a key focus on tai tamariki and making sure we're getting it, the kōrero out into the schools, into our kura, and making sure that there's avenues for them to feedback in. So that's something that TWAG are currently focused on in our communications plan. And yeah, so that's because this is their future we're talking about. And they actually have some really valuable ideas, and the way they see the world is different, and we need to be making sure that that's captured. Yeah. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you. Kia ora. Well, mihi ana kia koe, Karina. Thank you so much for making time tonight, Karina. I want to ask you the similar question, Karina, from your experience, and please take a moment to introduce yourself as well too. Thank you. Kia ora, Karina.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to join you tonight. My name is Karina Ross, and I have been part of the primary sector liaison group representing Dairy and Seed. So I'm a policy advisor working for Dairy and Seed. The primary sector liaison group has been a collaborative group with all the primary sector organizations represented in the group, and some farmers and growers as well. And we developed a report that we finalized about a year ago with some recommendations from the group to the regional council. So just to answer your questions, if it's worthwhile engaging in the process. I would say definitely it's going to be the community and landowners who will be affected by the new plan and the new rules. And they will have to do the actions and potentially changes to how they farm or how they use the land. So it is really important to understand what is being proposed and to provide feedback around what will work for the people that are affected by what is proposed. So I would definitely say it is good to be involved, understand, and provide feedback around what people would like to see. But in the end, I guess it is the regional council that will look at all the feedback that comes in and decide what to do with that feedback and how to use it in a way that creates a fair outcome for people in the community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karina. I want to just acknowledge too that it is about community as well too. So We've had a few technical questions coming through, so I am going to ask Leon this question, and Leon and/or Justin. The question is from our audience: where does the land slope information come from, and what scale is it?
Right. So the way that we've looked at the land slope is through LiDAR, which is technology where you fly a plane over the land and you shoot light down, bounces back, hits the sensor, and it tells you the underlying topography of the ground. This was done a couple years ago, and with I suppose the latest advances in this technology, the detail is really, really fine. So, you're getting down to less than a meter accuracy. If you've got a farm track, for instance, going through a paddock, it will pick up the slope of your farm track. So the maps that we've put out on our website, whyitmatters.nz, that's the raw data. So it will, it'll get down to these tiny little pixels, which will be about the size of a person if you're looking at the aerial photo. So that's where we've got that information. We do think it's pretty good. It does take vegetation into account as well, so it can shoot that light through the trees, the canopy, and come back up, and it's pretty good. Obviously, it's not going to be 100%. With this sort of aerial survey, there's always going to be imperfections or just anomalies that you don't know about until you go out to site. So what we've done is we've just released the raw data. We haven't done any filtering to it whatsoever. We've just shown this is what our LiDAR says is over 25 degrees. And we've also have a second layer, which is 35 degrees, which, as mentioned before, is quite steep.
Welcome to Te Tokoro, eh? Look, I want to come to you, Justin. And so another question is, why would farmers need a resource consent for land application of wastewater when they're already doing it within environmental values and management rules?
Right, yeah, that's a good question. Kia ora tātou, Justin Murphy. I'm policy analyst with the Regional Council, and for the last few years I've been working on this draft along with a bunch of other people. So why would we look at shifting from a permitted activity rule to a consent required for farm dairy effluent disposal to land? Great question. We know we've got E. coli issues that's widespread across the region. Pretty much all our rivers are in a poor or very poor state in terms of E. coli, which elevates the risk of swimming, collecting food, and the like, as Leon mentioned. We also know that the permitted activity rule is generic across the region. So it applies the same standards and terms no matter where you are in Northland, no matter what's downstream of your farm. And that the other issue with permitted activity rule is that the non-compliance on the permitted activity farm dairy effluent disposal to land is higher than it is for consented disposal. So we know we've got some problems. One of the key things is that, so a permitted activity, as I said, it's got generic standards and terms. That doesn't allow council to apply, say, special conditions that reflect what's downstream and what might be sensitive downstream. So a Mahinga Kai site, that's important to local people. Drinking water takes, small domestic ones. Swimming sites, for example, and a whole bunch of other things that could actually mean wahi tapu, that mean the permitted activity doesn't protect those things. So that's why we think a controlled activity is probably a better way to better manage local values for freshwater, and that consent process can give us that rigor to fine tune things so the impacts are managed in a better way.
Thank you, Justin. Oh, it's a great answer and appreciate it. There's Leon, I'm going to just come to you and ask a question. Leon, it's an important question for Māori. Who will pay for the stock exclusion fencing on Māori land? there's not enough money for major capital projects on most beef farms.
Yep, this is an issue across the region. So we know that it's going to be expensive, and we know that a lot of that capital investment is hard to front up. So keeping that in mind, Regional Council does have some opportunities to look at alternative ways of support, either through providing funding or through a look at rural rates, that sort of thing. Nothing has been proposed or discussed at any length at this stage, just because we're still in this draft space. There aren't any rules that are really on the table. But we're also looking at time. So we know that we have these issues and we need to deal to them. We can't fix everything overnight. And a lot of that is because of cost, of resources, of supply. If everyone had to fence their waterways overnight, there wouldn't be enough pine trees even in Northland to cover all that. So we'd be looking at some sort of a gradient where we'd be looking at over a period of time to really get everything fenced off. So that would also give us time to seek funding, find additional sources, that sort of thing. So we know that it's expensive. Council can't fund it themselves, of course. We'd definitely be looking everywhere we can and looking at changing the way the rates perhaps are dealt with. So it's an open-ended question. Really, it'll come down to the people of Te Tai Tokoro. If we're willing to pay more as a region to help fund that, or if we need to find another way. So it's a good question. We don't have an answer at the moment. It's one that we really need to be thinking about over the next few years.
Yeah, thank you, Leon. And the importance of partnerships with our Tiriti partners to consider what it is we put forward to central government to support for this long-term support in our region. I want to ask Leon. Look, sorry.
May I
Māori.
interrupt?
Kia ora, Māori. Of course you can, Māori.
Yeah, thank you. Just as an option, and this is where we want thinking to come and ideas to come out of left field. And I've just written down, let's use our imagination in that can't afford to do it space. Might there be alternative income earners generated by different activities in the strip that will pay for the fencing? I don't know whether there's been high value income earners from bees, from honey, from rongoa. So is there something that can be done that can give people hope in closing off that space and in fencing it off? Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Māori. And important to be asking questions as well, not just looking for answers, but we want questions as well too as part of the feedback. Look, can I go to Troy? Troy, I want to just ask you, what does this new freshwater plan mean for Māori landowners, Papakainga and Marae? You've talked about it in your presentation, but especially given the issues around climatic events and the climate emergencies, Troy. So I want to just dig a bit deeper for you, please.
Yeah, beautiful question. I think in the first instance, I just want to reiterate for those out there that are Māori landowners in Papakainga and marae representatives and committees, please do put in a submission on this plan change, especially relating any emergency hazards and natural hazards events or climatic emergencies that have happened in the past, because we'll really learn from it, and we really want to hear that voice in this draft freshwater plan change. Some of the things that come to my mind when we think about what does this mean for those individuals and Ropu, especially given the climate emergency. If we look at the targeted allocation, This really ensures that there is water available in times of drought, but we do have to balance that up with the healthiness of our waterways and what is available for water take. We also have Te Mauri me Te Mano Te Wai, and also Te Mano Te Wai in a national policy statement, which gives us a range of obligations of or hierarchy that ensures that we are ensuring the health of the waterway is healthy, but also the health of the people are healthy, especially around those health needs of people as well. It also means that you can be quite active in decision making in those areas. So we can learn from some of these climatic events in the past, like I said, in terms of droughts, but also in terms of flooding events that have happened. If we look to our cousins down in our whanaunga down on the east coast, in the Hawke's Bay, and the devastation that kind of happened in those areas as a result of recent rain events and storm events down there, even more recently, like really recently. We can kind of learn from these things as well and ensure that we do have active participation and engagement with tangata whenua, because we do have a voice when it comes to freshwater management. And we can start to learn from these events and implement them into our decision makings going forward. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, especially around the climate emergency space.
Toda, thank you, Troy. Look, and looking at different solutions or different ideas, we've got one that's come from the audience, and Justin, from the audience, Canterbury farmers using mussel shells to filter water through to the ocean.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I haven't heard much about that, but look, we're open to all sorts of innovations, as Marty mentioned. How we ensure we're going to achieve the water quality improvement we're after, we tend to have to, council needs certainty that the improvements over time are going to happen. And that generally means we need some sort of reliance on rules because they provide that certainty. Things like filtering with mussel shells, potentially, if you can use that to better treat farmed area effluent or something like that, or use it in your riparian margins to ensure runoff gets a level of treatment as well as whatever grass you've got there as well. I think that those sorts of things can be considered through a consent process, i.e. if we've got a setback of X meters required from a waterway, the landowner wants to go, well, actually, I can go closer, I reckon, if I do something like this filtering approach. And that can be considered through the consent process, and the landowner may well be able to demonstrate that a much narrower setback is all you needed when you're doing this kind of thing, assuming it works. I don't know too much about how effective it is, though. But we're open to any and all suggestions. We need all the help we can get. That's why we're here.
Want to just bring in Troy because he's had experience in mussel shell filtration. Anyway, over to you, Troy.
Good for that, Muriel. Yeah, mussel cells are actually quite effective when it comes to heavy metal removal, especially dissolved metals. Many different studies out there available that Auckland, not council, the University of Auckland have done multiple studies within the Auckland region, but also further afield in the likes of Nelson, Picton, Waikawa down there. And also in Canterbury itself. So no surprise that they're using it down there in Canterbury, especially with the heavy metal rules and ECANs down there. But there's also not just using the mussel shells, there's also oyster shells that are potential, and we have a lot of oyster operations in the far north, as well as, Upper Mahurangi as well. So, these are all potentials to help filter out water as part of our proposed stormwater rules and freshwater rules. But I think the main thing is determining what that target contaminant is and having those objectives around that. So again, really need your feedback and submissions around what we should be targeting. But also, just to say, alongside the mussel shells themselves, there's also experiments and projects out there at the moment using live mussels. I know one particular one in downtown Auckland where Ngāti Whātua worked really closely with Auckland Council and have a live mussel treating a a stormwater intake or outtake discharge, stormwater discharge into the Waitemata down there. So again, very versatile and a great use of using mātauranga and science for you know, a really good purpose. So kia ora.
Kia ora, Troy. And really important too that we consider models that are working across the country as we engage in this kōrero. So thank you for that. I want to now, there's another question here. I think I'll go to Leon. Leon, what is the minimum in meters of land from swamps that should be riparian planting or New Zealand native tree restoration?
Right, thank you. That's a good question. So
I thought so too, Leon.
when it comes to the rules, we're not looking at requiring a minimum setback in terms of distance. So we're not looking at requiring planting, you know, native trees, that sort of thing on land outside of a wetland. A wetland almost acts like a kidney. So if the wetland is healthy and you're taking care of the sediment, it really does take care of itself. A lot of the riparian planting benefits come from along stream banks. So it helps reduce erosion. It helps filter water runoff. It provides a lot of woody debris that gets into the streams that can be used for in-stream habitat. Of course, it provides habitat on land as well for birds, insects, and some of our native lizards and frogs. Wetlands, you know, if you want to plant around your wetland, then go for it, because obviously the bigger the riparian setback, the more planting we have around our waterways, the more beneficial they are. But when it comes to trying to achieve the key outcomes of this freshwater plan change, we don't see having a minimum setback or minimum riparian planting away from a wetland as being you know, a key factor. Protecting wetlands, excluding stock from wetlands, absolutely, fence them all off. But in terms of riparian planting, we're really focusing those rules around our streams and lakes. Hopefully that's clear.
Oh, look, I think there's so much information. Clarity is important for different people asking different questions. So thank you so much. Look, I know Councillor Blackwell, John Blackwell has joined us, and there, although he's having technical difficulties with his camera, John, if you're available, I'd like to just take a quick moment for you, even just to introduce yourself, John, and just why do you think it's worthwhile people to engage in this process? What's your opinion on that, John? Kia ora.
Oh, thank you, Oriel. I'm a farmer near Dargaville, so I've been farming here all my life. Been involved with Federated Farmers for a long time, beef and lamb and those sort of things. So when you put a draft plan out like this, we're asking the community to see what they think of it and what's going to work well and what's not going to work well. And when you put a submission in, it's really good to put the negatives in, but also put a positive in if you can put a spin on how you think in your certain environment, what would work better than what we've got in this plan. So I would ask everybody that's involved with this is don't be quiet. We know central government may be changing the rules, but we don't know what they're going to change them to. So this is what we've got. So I'd really recommend if everybody could get the chance to submit, put their ideas forward, and we will certainly take them into account. Thank you, Oriel.
You're welcome, John. Thank you for joining us. Look, I want to ask this of Justin and also Celia, but because it's an important question, because what capacities building and support is there for hapu to do their own water plans? It's a really important question. How will hapu be supported to think about this on the level of what it is for their whānau, what it is for their strategy and strategic planning for the 50, 100 years to come. So can I just ask, please, Celia and Justin to respond to that? Thank you.
I can jump in and then Celia can fix my boo-boos. So council's already got some sort of support available for various Tāngata whenua monitoring initiatives. So there's some funding support for that. There's also a fund to support the development of iwi hapu management plans. But our draft action plan looks to take things a bit further. And that's available as part of the plan change package. But there's things like looking at a sort of a Hokianga-led freshwater planning process, scoping out what that could look like. So sort of supporting hapu at their rohi scale to look after their rivers and waterways, and do pretty much what we've done here. Vision, what we want to achieve, what we want to measure and manage, and how. And that could either inform a future regional plan change or more actions and the like. So there's that sort of thing. And we've also got in the action plan sort of support for monitoring Māori freshwater attributes, particularly some of those that TWAG group have recommended. So understanding, because they're not normal council business as usual, they are quite different to way council monitors water, but supporting the development of those, which can also inform this sort of hapu-led freshwater planning kind of process, but help council as well understand sort of the old Māori views, local views around what's important at that scale. So there's a bit out there. Yeah, so but we're looking for feedback on what else we could do as well. So what else do you think, would help in terms of freshwater management and hapu scale? But over to Celia.
Yeah, thank you, Celia. And understanding too that for our tohunga that are out there, freshwater is part of a bigger picture around the importance of Māori me te mano te wai. So Celia, I know freshwater planning is part of an instrument, but from your perspective, what is it that you think hapu will want us to support or look to support around this ability to plan for a future? Hilda.
Kia ora, thank you, Oriel, and thank you, Justin. Like for hapu, whan, marae, it's going to be really critical having our freshwater, for each of them to have freshwater plans and environmental management plans as a whole. Capacity is capability and capacity is an issue. And as Justin said, there are some levers within the freshwater plan change and the action plan and other aspects of council that is trying to assist in that space. There's also some funds at a national level, like Te Mātāpuna, where that can help hapu and marae and iwi to establish these plans. There's so much in the policy statement for freshwater. There is so much of being not put on us, but allowing us to participate in a meaningful way, which means we need to start making sure that we've got our plans in place. And so being aware of the funding that's out there at a national level, although who knows what's going to happen in the future, but I know that Te Mātāpuna fund at least is an iwi leaders fund, so that will be there.
I was going to mention that, so thank you.
Yeah, so that I don't think that's going to go anywhere with the change in government. But it's really making sure that there's an avenue where our whānau can access the funds and access them easily. That's probably the other thing. And we've TWAG have highlighted a whole bunch of these things in terms of building capability and capacity. And I know NRC as a whole is looking at, how they do that as well. Yeah, Hilda.
Hilda, Celia, thank you so much. Look, Karina, I know you're sitting there. I think, Karina, I just want to check in. Is there any other comments as we start to wrap up? Is there any other comments you would like to make, Karina? In terms of the kōrero and questions.
No, yeah, thank you so much. There's been some really good questions and good answers. And yeah, I don't have really a lot to add. So just kind of reiterate the importance of people understanding what's being proposed and really making their voice heard. And I really liked, not sure if it was Marty who said, or John, that we need both. We need to know both what's not going to work, but also the solutions. And I think that was a really good thing to kind of reiterate that, yeah, finding alternative solutions if the ones that are proposed are not going to work for the people that are affected. So that I think that was really good thing to reiterate. So thank you so much for the webinar and the presentations tonight.
Oh, thank you for joining us, Karina. Look, I know we are wrapping up at 7:55, so look, I just want to finish with one more question, and then we will look at final comments from the panel and close off. So it's a quick question, and let's see if Leon, this is a question. Community whānau and hapu out on the ground can see what is happening every day on their whenua and in their awa. Why isn't council letting them look after the water on their own land? Kia ora, Leon. I left the toughie till last, and then we're going to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the easy one.
Is it? Yes, it is. Kia ora.
Hey, if you regional council is more than happy to get citizens engaged, and if you want to look after the water and land that's on your property or in your rohe, then please do. There are a lot of great outreach programs that the regional council does, that Department of Conservation does. There are local catchment groups that you can get involved with. Regional council does have statutory functions though, so we do have laws that we need to be able to regulate aspects of the environment to make sure that the waterways are healthy. So we have that arm, but we also have that support arm where we want to enable and get everybody involved in improving our environment. So it's not an either or, it's let's do it all together. Carrot and a stick.
Yeah. Oh, good answer. Good answer. Look, I wanted to just touch on, we've had questions around council looking at transfer of powers and resources to kaitiaki so they can do their own water monitoring. What I know is that we already are engaged in many of those conversations with hapu that are already doing that work, and we understand that the mana of those hapu and kaitiaki are important in leading us through what the council needs to consider to be able to meet our statutory requirements as a regional council. So I just want to say we are committed to that, and we have that in our Tākie Te Tiriti strategy and our work that we are doing with iwi and hapu through the Te Tautokoro Māori Council Working Party. So I just want to mention that before we wrap up, because it's been an important part of the work in looking at the freshwater plan change and asking those that know the work to please engage. So I'm going to wrap up now at 7:55. Firstly, I just want to thank all of you that came and contributed questions, listened to the noisy voice of your MC tonight, but also to the commitment from our panelists, and particularly a mihi to the Tāngata Whenua Water Advisory Group that have sat through this and are now sitting to support council and partnership to undertake this work. We have a long way to travel, but as we know, there is a long way to go and lots of work to do. Nō reira, kia ora nā koutou katoa. I am going to finish with karakia if we have still got people on or still people listening, to whakawātea our kōrero tonight and to be able to go and have dinner with my mokopuna. Nō reira, kia inoi tātou. Kia tātou katoa. Te ata whai o tō tātou ariki a ihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tāpū, ake, amine. Nō reira, kia ora. Thank you.